Harmless. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. Because what could possibly be wrong with someone wanting to make you feel beautiful again? It's been 2 years since that afternoon. 2 years since he lifted that camera, smiled at me, and changed everything I thought I knew about myself. I keep thinking back to that moment, wishing I could reach through time, grab that version of myself by the shoulders, and shake her awake before she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. But life doesn't give warnings. It doesn't hold up a sign that says turn back now. It just offers you a choice. And sometimes when you're lonely enough, when you've been invisible long enough, you don't even realize you're making a choice. You just fall. I thought it was just a photograph. I thought it was just a way to pass a lazy afternoon. I didn't know it would become a mirror, showing me all the empty places inside I had been trying so hard to ignore. If you've ever found yourself standing at the edge of something you never planned to touch, if you've ever wondered how one tiny moment can change the shape of your whole life, then maybe you'll understand why I'm telling this story. Stay with me. Listen close. Because this isn't just about a camera. It's about all the little ways we lose ourselves before we even realize we're lost. Subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where every story dares to touch the unspoken places in our hearts. I guess I should tell you who I am, or maybe who I used to be. I married young. Too young, probably. Back then, it felt like the safest thing to do, to find someone who said he'd stay. And for a while, he did. We built a life. A small, ordinary life. Tucked inside a quiet suburban neighborhood where every lawn looked the same, every morning smelled like burnt coffee and tired promises. The years went by. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being the girl he used to look at like I was the whole sky. I just became part of the background. Another piece of furniture he didn't really see anymore. He worked hard, I'll give him that. Always working, always tired, always with his phone buzzing in his pocket. Some client, some deadline, something always more urgent than me. Even when he was home, he wasn't really there. He'd sit on the couch, scrolling through his phone, nodding absently whenever I tried to talk. At night, we slept back to back, the space between us growing colder with every passing year. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't anger. It was just emptiness. The kind that creeps in slow, like water seeping into the cracks of a house you don't notice until the foundation starts to crumble. And then there was him. My stepson. Barely a boy anymore, not quite a man yet either. 17, maybe 18. Quiet. Gentle in the way that made you lean in without realizing it. Always carrying that camera around his neck like it was part of him. He didn't say much, but when he looked at you, it was like he really saw you. At first, I thought it was just his artist's eye. You know how creative kids are, always noticing details, always looking for beauty in forgotten places. But after a while, I started to wonder if maybe he was seeing things no one else bothered to see anymore. The house we lived in was nothing special. 2 stories, beige siding, a little patch of grass out front we barely bothered to mow. Inside, it was neat enough, but cold. Not because the heater was broken, but because somehow, without us ever meaning to, we'd frozen each other out. We spent our weekends together but apart. He'd be upstairs, door half open, editing his photos. My husband would be on the couch, glued to the TV or his phone. And me. I floated between them like a ghost. Washing dishes no one thanked me for. Folding laundry that nobody noticed. Smiling because it was easier than admitting how invisible I had become. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I didn't wake up one morning thinking I would cross a line I could never uncross. But the thing about loneliness, the thing about being unseen for so long, is that when someone finally looks at you, really looks, it can feel like oxygen after years of drowning. Sometimes, the people who notice us most aren't the ones who should. It was a Sunday. The kind of day where the sun streams in just right through the windows, making everything look softer than it really is. I was sitting on the couch, an old book in my lap, pretending to read, but mostly just flipping pages without seeing the words. The house was quiet. That heavy kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just hollow. I heard him before I saw him. The soft creak of the floorboards under his feet, that camera strap brushing against his t-shirt. And then he was standing there, in the doorway, half in, half out, like he wasn't sure if he should come closer. He gave this little awkward smile, the kind that made you want to smile back without thinking. And in his hands, as always, was that camera. Almost like it gave him courage he didn't know how to find otherwise. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, cleared his throat, and said, "Hey, I was wondering if you'd let me take some pictures of you." I blinked up at him, confused at first. Me? Of all the things he could have said, that was the last one I expected. I laughed. One of those nervous, automatic laughs that spill out when you're caught off guard. "Pictures of me?" I said, shaking my head. "I'm hardly model material." But he just shrugged, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "For my portfolio," he said. "I'm doing a series. Real beauty. Honest faces. Not fake stuff. Real beauty. Honest faces." Something in the way he said it, the way he looked at me when he said it, it made my heart stutter. Made my skin feel too tight for my own body. I tried to brush it off, joke about needing a paper bag over my head or at least better lighting. But he just smiled again, that small, patient smile. Like he was waiting for me to believe him. And for a moment, just a moment, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe there was still something beautiful left in me. Something worth capturing. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, feeling foolish and exposed all at once. "All right," I said, pretending like it was no big deal. "One or two, but no close-ups." He laughed, a soft, genuine sound that filled the empty room in a way nothing else had in a long, long time. And, just like that, it began. There's something dangerously sweet about being noticed. When you've been invisible for too long. I told myself it was harmless. Just a few pictures. Nothing more. It wasn't like I was doing anything wrong. Was it? He needed someone for his project. I just happened to be here, willing to help. That's what I kept repeating in my head, like a prayer, like a shield. But even as I said it, I could feel something stirring deep inside me. Something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. A hunger. Not for him, not at first. It wasn't about him, not really. It was about the way his eyes stayed on me, steady, unwavering. As if I was something worth looking at. It was about the way he held the camera. Like what he was capturing mattered. Like I mattered. And I hated how much I needed that. How starved I was for it. How the smallest crumbs of attention felt like a feast after so many years of drought. I sat there, fidgeting with the hem of my shirt, forcing myself to smile while he adjusted the settings on his camera. Telling myself it was silly to feel so nervous. Telling myself it was just a favor, just an afternoon. Telling myself lies. The kind of lies that taste sweet going down but leave a bitter aftertaste you can't wash away. Somewhere in the back of my mind, old memories stirred. Faded photographs from another lifetime. Me and my husband. Young, laughing, arms tangled around each other like we never wanted to let go. Photos where he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world he wanted to capture. Photos we used to hang proudly on the walls, until little by little, they got replaced. Newer frames. Newer memories. Except the smiles got thinner. The laughter got quieter. And eventually, the pictures stopped altogether. I swallowed hard against the ache rising in my throat. I hadn't realized how much I missed being looked at like that. Missed being seen not as a wife, or a mother, or someone's responsibility, but as a woman. A person. A soul still burning, even if the world had forgotten to notice. He raised the camera. Lifted it slowly, almost reverently. And when he looked through that lens at me, when he raised the camera that first time, something shifted in the room. And in me. After that first afternoon, it didn't stop. It became a thing between us. Unspoken but understood. Whenever the house was quiet, whenever my husband was away or buried deep in his work, he'd appear with that camera slung over his shoulder. And I would pretend not to be waiting for him. Pretend not to feel that flicker of excitement every time I heard his footsteps coming closer. At first, we stayed in the living room. The light there was good, he said. Natural. Soft. He liked to catch me sitting by the window, book in hand, hair falling loose around my face. Don't pose, he would say. Just be. And somehow, those words unraveled something in me. Made me drop the little shields I didn't even know I was still carrying. The photos started simple, fully dressed, curled up on the couch, barefoot with my legs tucked underneath me. But little by little, he pushed for more. Let your hair down, he said one day, when I'd pulled it back in its usual tight knot. You look softer that way. Softer. The word lingered in the air, sweeter than it had any right to be. So I let it fall around my shoulders. And when I saw the way he looked at me then, not through the camera, but over it, something deep inside me answered. Another time, he asked if I could wear something more casual. Something that feels like you, he said, almost shyly. I found an old sundress tucked away at the back of my closet. Loose, flowing, simple. The kind of dress I hadn't worn since the days when I still felt young and wanted. It smelled faintly of dust and forgotten summers. I slipped it on. And when I stepped into the room, barefoot, hair down, no makeup, no pretense, I saw the way his hands trembled just slightly as he lifted the camera. I should have felt ashamed. I should have turned around, laughed it off, changed back into my jeans and t-shirt. But instead, I stood there. I let him look. I let him see. The poses grew softer, more vulnerable. I wasn't smiling in the pictures anymore. Wasn't hiding behind rehearsed grins or practiced angles. I was just there, open, unhidden. Sometimes he'd pause, lower the camera, just watching me with this look, like he was memorizing me, piece by piece. Like he was seeing things even I had forgotten were still there. One afternoon, as I sat cross-legged on the carpet with the sun pouring in behind me, he said, almost whispering, "You don't have to smile if you don't want to. Just be you." And God help me, the way he said it. Like being myself was enough. Like being myself was exactly what he wanted to capture. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. Was it admiration? Was it pity? Was it something else? I didn't know. And at that moment, I didn't care. All I knew was that it had been so long since anyone had made me feel like just being me was worth anything at all. The emotional intimacy between us grew thicker by the day. It filled the spaces between our words, hummed under the quiet moments, pulsed in the air like electricity waiting for the right moment to strike. One afternoon, he asked me to wear something different. Something softer. Something that showed more of who I really was. I should have said no. I should have said no. Every instinct inside me knew it. But somehow, the word got stuck in my throat, and something else. Something lonelier, something hungrier, answered for me. I said yes. I went upstairs and opened the closet. The dress was still there, buried behind years of practical clothes. It was delicate, almost fragile now, pale blue, with thin straps and a skirt that brushed against my knees like a whisper. A dress I hadn't worn since long before life had hardened into routine. A dress meant for a version of me that had been young and full of light. I hesitated, ran my fingers over the fabric. Felt the dust of old dreams slip between them. And then I slipped it on. The fabric clung to places I had long stopped believing were beautiful. It felt wrong and right all at once, like stepping into a memory that no longer belonged to me. I stood there for a moment, looking at myself in the mirror. Seeing a stranger. Seeing a woman who was still alive underneath all the years of being overlooked. A woman I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. My heart hammered against my ribs as I made my way back downstairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I stepped into the room, he was already waiting, camera in hand. He looked up, and the moment his eyes found me, something inside both of us shifted. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His hands dropped slowly to his sides, the camera dangling forgotten for a breathless second. His eyes widened, not with shock, but with something softer. Something that made my knees feel weak. Something that stripped away every layer of pretense we'd been hiding behind. The air between us thickened. Heavier than silence. Heavier than gravity. For a long, suspended moment, neither of us moved. We just stood there, caught in the fragile, trembling space between what was and what could never be undone. Then, slowly, he lifted the camera again. But I saw it, the way his hands trembled just slightly, the way he had to steady himself. The shutter clicked. A sharp, sudden sound that cracked through the thick air like a whip. One flash. One capture. 1 second that held 1,000 things neither of us were ready to say out loud. And then, the silence. Not the comfortable silence we used to have when I sat reading and he hovered nearby. No, this silence was different. It was raw. It was loud. It screamed all the things we were too afraid to name. Our eyes met. No camera between us now. No excuses. Just two people, stripped bare by the simplest thing in the world, being seen. In that look, I saw all of it, the confusion, the longing, the fear, the pull neither of us could fully explain. Or maybe we could. Maybe we just didn't dare. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. It was something quieter, and somehow far more dangerous. That final photo wasn't just a portrait. It was a confession. Don't miss what happens after the shutter clicks. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold to follow this journey into the heart's hidden chambers. After the shutter clicked, it was like the room exhaled all at once and left us standing in the wreckage. He mumbled something, I don't even remember what, and disappeared up the stairs so fast it was like he was running from something. Maybe he was. Maybe we both were. I stayed there, rooted to the floor. Still in that pale blue dress. Still barefoot. Still exposed in every way that mattered. The house, usually so familiar, felt like a stranger's place now. Every creak of the floorboards sounded too loud. Every breath I took felt wrong, like the walls themselves were listening, judging. I sat down slowly on the couch, my hands trembling, my skin burning with a shame I couldn't name. I stared at the camera, still sitting on the coffee table where he'd dropped it. Part of me wanted to pick it up, to erase everything, to pretend none of it had happened, to delete whatever was captured inside. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew the damage was already done. Even if I wiped every photo off that memory card, I couldn't wipe the truth off my soul. I sat there for what felt like hours, the minutes dragging by in slow, suffocating waves. The sun slipped lower, casting long, accusing shadows across the carpet. Still, I didn't move. I didn't dare. When I finally gathered the courage to stand, it was like waking up from a fevered dream. I went upstairs without making a sound, slipping into the bathroom, locking the door behind me like it could somehow keep everything out. I peeled off the dress with shaking hands, crumpling it into a ball and shoving it into the back of the closet where it belonged. But no matter how fast I moved, no matter how tightly I shut the doors, I couldn't close off what had already been unleashed. The next day we barely spoke. When we did, it was all careful words, overly polite, filled with spaces where real conversation used to live. I'd pass him in the hallway and we'd both flinch, like we were afraid of touching even by accident. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I couldn't meet his. And when we did, when our gazes accidentally collided across the breakfast table or in the kitchen doorway, there was something there now. Something heavy. Something neither of us had the courage to name. I didn't know if he hated me, or if he hated himself. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe, in the end, it was the same thing. The days that followed blurred together, but the weight never lifted. It just settled deeper into my bones, heavy and unforgiving. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over, like a prayer I didn't expect to be answered. Was it harmless? Was it just a photograph? Was it me imagining things that weren't there? Or had something real and dangerous passed between us? And if it had, who crossed the line first? Was it him? With his lingering gaze, his trembling hands, his careful invitations? Or was it me, with my silent hunger, my desperate, aching need to be seen? I wanted so badly to believe I was innocent, that I was just helping with his project, just playing along, that I hadn't asked for any of it, but the truth gnawed at the edges of every thought I tried to build around myself. I hadn't asked with words, but I had answered with everything else. I had let the loneliness inside me speak louder than reason. I had let the hollow spaces in my chest make decisions my mind was too afraid to face. And it wasn't about the photographs. It never was. It was about the way he looked at me. The way, for the first time in longer than I could admit, I didn't feel invisible. Didn't feel forgotten. It was about being seen. Truly seen. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's stepmother. But as a woman who still existed. A woman who hadn't disappeared completely beneath the years. For a moment, he made me feel real again. And yet, the cost of being seen felt heavier than all the years of being overlooked ever did. Loneliness is a quiet kind of pain. It settles in slowly, dull, and familiar. But shame roars in your ears and strangles your heart. I couldn't look in the mirror without seeing it, without feeling it, without hearing the deafening echo of everything I had allowed myself to become. What do you do when the mirror shows you a part of yourself you never wanted to meet? Have you ever found yourself crossing a line? Not because you wanted to betray someone, but because you forgot how it felt to be alive? I never set out to break anything. Not vows. Not trust. Not myself. But loneliness is a slow poison. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one glance, to awaken something you thought was long dead inside you. I keep wondering, was I a villain? Was I selfish? Weak? Cruel? Or was I just a woman, lost in the silence of being unseen? I don't know if there's a right answer. Maybe there never is. Maybe sometimes, life just hands you broken pieces and watches to see what you'll do with them. If stories like this stir something deep inside you, if they make you feel a little less alone in the messy corners of your own heart, please like this video and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the hidden truths of the human heart. Desire doesn't always wear the face of lust. Sometimes it wears loneliness. And sometimes it wears regret. A photograph can capture a moment forever, but it can also expose the fractures we never wanted anyone to see. I still wonder what he saw in me that day, and if he ever wishes he hadn't.